Welcome to the session. So in this session, we are going to discuss about process and its management, process concepts. So in this process management, we are going to discuss process concept, introduction to processes, scheduling, process scheduling, and various operations on processes, IPC, inter-process communication, and some of the examples on IPC and communication in client-server systems. So these are the topics we are going to cover under this process management. Moving further, the main agenda or main objective behind this discussion on process is to introduce the process, that is a program in execution. So to better understand with the computation concepts and to describe various features of processes, includes scheduling, creation and termination and communication, and to describe communication in client server systems. So this is Pradeep Kumar from Department of CSC, AJ Institute of Engineering and Technology, Mangaluru. So we begin with the content, the process concepts. An operating system which executes a variety of programs. So maybe individual programs may be executed, single program may be executed, many programs, multi-programs can be executed in the backend. So when we try to execute the batch system, so that is a job, we can say it as a job. So time shared systems are nothing but user programs or tasks. So over here, a process, what is process? A process is nothing but a program in execution. So process execution must progress in sequential fashion, line by line execution. So whatever the program is under execution, there is nothing but a process. So when you say process, a process includes program counter, stack, and data section. On the other hand, we can say we can include text section also, whatever the code we have written already as a program. So that is treated as a text part, text section. So it will include text part and program counter, stack, and data section. So these are the individual units of a process. So the multiple parts of the process are the program code, as we said. The program code is also called as text section, and the current activity included in that program counter. So that is via processor registers. So the current instruction that is to be executed, that is available under this program counter. So then stack will have the temporary data. So the temporary data includes function parameters, return addresses, local variables, if any, that is used to save the data. And data section contains global variables. So whatever the variable that is declared as a global, that is available in the data section. Heap, that contains memory dynamically allocated during runtime. So the heap is used for dynamic memory allocation, heap management used with the dynamic memory allocation. Program is passive entity, process is active. So this is something like a program. Why we have saying that program is passive, in the sense we can write a program, can create a new program, and we can keep it ready in the memory, can save it. Whenever we start to execute at that time, so it will come to the live state. So that is what the process is active at that end. So program becomes a process when executable file loaded into memory. Whenever we start executing the particular program, then it will be treated as a process. So execution of program started via graphical user interfaces, that is mouse click, or via using command line entry of its name. So these are the various perspective of executing the program. Either we can make use of graphical user interfaces by clicking different options, or via typing different run command on a command prompt. So one program can be in several processes. So that is if you're considering many or multiple users executing the same program in different machines simultaneously in the backend. So that is each time a particular program may be in different processes. So these are the individual parts of the process. It will include text part, that is program code. It will have a program counter, that is next instruction that is to be executed, that is available under that. Nothing but a register. Then we have a stack. Stack will maintain temporary data, which will have the function parameters, return addresses, and local variables. Data section will have the global variables, and heap is used for a dynamic memory allocation. So these are the individual parts of the process. Moving further, in this diagram, you can see a process in memory. So this is a, please follow my cursor along with. So 0 to max, these are the addresses. So we have text section. Text section, nothing but program code or whatever the code that we have written, set of instructions, all those are available in this text section. Data section, the actual data, local data available under this. Global as well as static data also available under this data section, and heap section to maintain memory, dynamic memory allocation. Then we have a stack. Stack will maintain local variables or function parameters if any, and return addresses. All those comes under this. This is how it looks in memory, a process in memory. So this is a single process to consider if it during an execution. Coming to the process state, this is an important concept. Process state. As a process executes, it changes states. The process may be in these of any one of these states, either new, the process is being created, or in running state, instructions are being executed, or the process is in a waiting state, the process is waiting for some event to occur. A ready state, the process is waiting to be assigned to a processor for execution. Terminated, when the process finished its execution. So these are the various states of processes. So when we say the program is in execution, at that time the process may be in any one of this particular state. So whenever we create a new process using previous process or continuation with the previous thread, then it may be new, that is during the process is being created, during creation of the process. Running, the instructions are being executed. Waiting, the process is waiting for some event to occur, either input or output or any event based on the instruction that is to be executed. And ready, the process is waiting to be assigned to a processor for its execution. This is a state. And terminated, the process has finished its execution. So it looks like this. So graphical representation of a process state. So here, please follow the cursor. This is a new. So when the process has been created, initially the process will be in this new state. So whenever a new process has been created. Next, once the process is ready, so we'll submit it to the next state. That is, we are going to save the program. So that is admitted. We are admitting that particular process to the next state, that is ready state. From the ready state, whenever the processor is waiting to execute, so it will move to the scheduler will dispatch that particular process to the running state. So that is nothing but whenever we say the program is ready, the process is ready, at that time we are justifying that it is waiting for the execution. So whenever we call, whenever the scheduler dispatches, it will move to the running state. Running in the sense it is in the any one of the part, maybe in the execution. Then if something happens in between during running this particular state, if something happens, it moves to the ready state. So that is something in the sense, if interrupt, if there is one more input is needed, that is input interrupt might have been raised. So at that time it moves back to ready state until you give the input, it will be in the ready state, or else it will move to the exit, that is terminated, that is it completes its execution. And in between running also, for an IO event, IO input output or any other event, so it will move to the waiting state. From waiting state, it will again, whenever an IO event is completed, input output or event completion, then it again moves to the ready state. Then the scheduler dispatches for running, and so on. So this is a repetitive structure. So this is the process state, one of the important concept under process. Process involves, or process may be in any one of these 5 states. So the initial, whenever the process has been created, it is called as new state. Whenever the process has been ready after creation, it will move to the ready state, that is ready for execution. Then we have a running state. When the program is under execution, we move to the running state. And we have waiting state. If the particular process is waiting for IO input or IO event to complete, so it will move to the waiting state. When the execution completes, it move to the termination state. So this is the process state. Then we have PCB, process control block. To look after all these activities, all these 5 activities, we are supposed to maintain complete data in PCB, process control block. So PCB will have these many informations in it. One is a process state, program counter, CPU registers, CPU scheduling information, memory management, accounting information, and IO status information. So this is how it looks, PCB. So the process control block supposed to maintain all this information in its memory, That is process state, in which state a particular process is. The states are any one out of 5, starting from ready. So starting from new, ready, running, waiting, or terminated. So that particular state should be recorded over here. Then process number, that is identification or a synchronous maintenance. So a process number has been given for individual processes. Then we have a program counter. So in program counter, will monitor the next instruction that is to be executed in that process. Registers will maintain the memory. Individual data can be stored, individual register can be stored. Memory limits. So this is for a dynamic allocation purpose. So whatever the memory is needed to execute for this particular process, that is been available under this. And list of open files. So these open files are nothing but the files that is used by these particular processes. Whatever the process has been under execution, so those processors will make use of this list of open files. So that is to be recorded over here. So everything should be recorded in its PCB, process control block. So using this PCB, it just serves as a repository or a storage for any information related with the process. Clear? So it will just maintain all the information related with the process. See, switch from process to process. Consider this a situation. An execution is going on a processor. So there is process P0 and P1. P0 is already an execution state. So in between, it needed some information from the other process. So how it takes place? So consider initially P0 started its execution. Then during an execution, a particular line which requests some information from the process P1. So at that time, the process P0 stops its execution temporarily, that is via interrupt or system call. So whenever the interrupt occurs, automatically the state into PCB 0, because each process should maintain its own PCB, process control block. So whenever a particular process move to any other state, so each movement with respect to different state, that should be recorded in PCB. And it requests for some information from process P1. So whenever process P0 halted its execution, it moved to the idle state or wait state. Then the state is recorded in PCB. So it is requesting something from process P1. So that is a reload state from PCB 1, saying that the control is transferred to the process P1 for its execution. So now process P1 is in execution. Again, we'll get a interrupt or system call. So on the other side, on PCB, process control block of P1, the states should be recorded. saying that process P1 moves to the idle state and the reloading of PCB continues. Then PCB reloading of process P0, that is, once it gets the service from the other process, get the input from the other process, the initial process continues its execution. So whenever it continues execution, again PCB, the process control block, should update its state, reload state from PCB 0. Then the execution continues with respect to P1. So this is how CPU switch from process to process takes place in the processor via the help of operating system. Any clarification, any doubt so far? Process scheduling. So process scheduler selects among available processes for next execution on CPU. So why we need this one, scheduling, process scheduling? To maximize CPU use, to quickly switch processes onto CPU for time sharing also. So if you consider the previous example, in this case, the time sharing between process execution between process P0 and P1, right? So that is to be managed by the process scheduler. So process scheduler selects among available processes for next execution on CPU. Then, so it is the process scheduler should maintain scheduling queues of processes. So when we say scheduling queues, so it may have a job queue, it will have ready queue, it will have device queue. So job queue is nothing but set of all processes in the system. Whatever the processes we have in the system, so that is everything is recorded in this job queue. We have ready queue, set of all processes residing in main memory. So that is ready for execution and waiting to execute. It is ready for execution and waiting for execution. Then we have a device queue. So device queues are set of processes waiting for an IO device. For example, during an execution, it needs input from the user, input from the keyboard, or input from the mouse, input from any one of the peripherals. So that is, at that time, the process is in waiting state. So device queue will maintain that particular IO devices so that it will record the corresponding processes. Similarly for the output also. So after the execution, the process should support to write its output. It's waiting for a IO output device. So those things are available under this device queue. And one thing supposed to remember, the processes may migrate among the various queues. So from here to there and all. So may switch, because one during the different phases of execution of processes, different states. So the processes may migrate from one to other. So here you can see a small example to represent process representation in Linux. So that is as an example of C structures. So here over here, please follow my cursor. PID, TPID, that is process identifier. We are creating a process identifier, and using this state, we are representing state of the processes. Then to scheduling information. So scheduling information, nothing but it is given the time slot. Each time slice has been given for a particular process. So that is maintained under this. Then this is a parent process recording children. That is when a new process has been created either from parent, inheriting from the parent, or the new. So that is to be recorded. And list of open files as per our PCB, that is to be maintained. Process control block. And then address space to maintain with that. So now, so initially the process, the first process may be in the ready state, then it moves to the next state, and so on. So for each process, for each task, supposed to maintain process information. So this process information is by the help of PCB, or all the process information is available in PCB. So that is how we can maintain in Linux. So via using different data types and different variables in Linux. Over here you can see is a current process under execution. So after completion of this particular execution, it moves to the next process, it completes that one, moves next, completes that process also, and it is vice versa. So this is how the process has been represented in form of Linux. So ready queue and various IO device queues. So now we have seen a small example with respect to Linux. So it has been started from this particular process, move to this and so on and repeated. So now how it can be depicted? So this is ready queue and various IO device queues now. So over here, this is a ready queue. Ready queue will have head and tail, nothing but queue headers. So head will point it to the PCB. PCB will have all the process informations. So from PCB 7, it will move to the PCB2. So what is this PCB 7 to PCB2 movement? Nothing but from the execution, during the execution, the particular process 7 pointed towards the execution of process B2. So from PCB 7, it should move on executing till PCB2. The tail end of the queue is PCB2. So throughout this particular process, different execution, there may be 4 to 5 different processes in between. So now this is maintained in a queue. That's why we have a ready queue. So ready queue's job is to maintain list of processes that is ready for its execution. So this is pointed via ready queue's head and this is pointed via the tail end. That is why tail over here. So these number of processes are waiting for its turn to execute. Okay. Similarly, we may have different other units also. Even that also will maintain head and tail. For example, disk. The disk scheduling, that is for your dynamic memory allocation, we need memory space. That is also will be having head and tail. Head will point to the first process details, that is first PCB process control block, and then PCB 14 and then PCB 6. This is how in the queue it is waiting for its turn to use the memory. So this is how the queue is maintained. So whenever we say queue, it should have a clear-cut head and clear-cut tail representation. Head is nothing but the starting address of a particular process that is to be executed first. In this case, it is PCB 7, and the tail end, that is PCB 2. So throughout this, the execution should happen in the backend, and so on. So there may be number of terminals also. They may be using different PCBs and for its execution. This is how the process PCB maintains its different queues. It has a ready queue, it has a job queue, it has device queue. So this is device queue. Say terminal different devices queue. This is job queue. This is ready queue. So different queues. So how we can represent this with respect to the diagrammatic representation for process scheduling. So we have a ready queue. So ready queue is nothing but the ready queue will have the set of processes that is to be ready for execution. And on the other hand, we can say ready queue is waiting for CPU's turn that is to be executed. So that's why we have an mark over here. So once the execution begin with the individual process, it may need IO request. Whenever it needs IO request, the IO queues will be alerted, and from the IO queue, it will get the input and again goes to the ready state. Then CPU continues its execution. Or during the CPU's execution, each process may be given with the particular time slot. So if the time slot is expired, slice is expired, then again it moves to the ready queue. It will wait under ready queue for its next turn. Again, the CPU will start its execution. So in between, the particular process may need another process's help. So you can fork a child. A new process has been created using a fork command. That is, child can be executed. Child executes, moves to the ready queue once again. Then again CPU continues its execution. It will wait for a particular interrupt that is to occur. For example, if during a printing process, if there is no sheets to print, so it will raise a interrupt saying that no sheets or the empty panel. So that is interrupt occurs at that time. It will again wait in the ready queue to continue its printing process. So this is how we can represent the different processes for its execution. So it started from a ready queue. Ready queue is nothing but list of processes to be waiting for its CPU's turn to execute. Processors waiting for a processor. So when processor arrives, starts executing the different processes. So in between, if it needs IO request, it will get that IO queue, get into IO queue, get it serviced and move to the ready queue. Again, CPU continues its execution. During execution, if a particular process done with its time slice, time period, it will move to the ready queue once again. Again, continue with the CPU execution. So it will create a process, new process or a child process can be created. So when it executes, again moves to the ready queue and CPU continues its execution. It may wait for an interrupt also. So when interrupt occurs, interrupt service routine will provide the service for a particular interrupt and it again moves to the ready queue and so on. So when the process completes its execution, it moves to the termination state. Okay. Moving further, schedulers. So scheduler's job is to provide the service from the CPU. So we have two types of schedulers, long-term scheduler and short-term scheduler. Long-term scheduler is also called as job scheduler. So its job is to select which process should be brought into the ready queue for its execution. So on the other hand, we can say it's supposed to load them into the memory. Long-term scheduler's job is to load the post processes into memory. Memory in the sense ready queue only. And then we have a short-term scheduler or CPU scheduler. It selects which process should be executed next and allocates the CPU. So which particular process should be executed next and allocates the CPU in an order. So that is short-term scheduler. On the other hand, we have another that is medium-term scheduler sometimes that is selects the process in ready queue and reintroduced into the memory. Sometimes we may need only one scheduler also in a particular system. Again, based on the operating system, it will be decided. The short-term scheduler is invoked very frequently. That is for a faster execution in milliseconds. So short-term scheduler's job is to select a job from a memory and assigns a CPU. So this is to be performed in a faster mode, the first one. Because each and every time, as we are expecting multi-programming and parallel programming, so that the short-term scheduler's job is to select a process and assign the CPU. Long-term scheduler invoked very infrequently, that is maybe for a second or per minute, or maybe more slow, still further slow execution. And the long-term scheduler controls the degree of multi-program. This is what we said. Multi-programming concept has been introduced by this long-term scheduler. Processes can be described as IO bound process and CPU bound process. So IO bound process in the sense it spends more time doing IO input output than computation, many short CPU bursts. That is, for example, if a particular program needs input from the user, if a particular program writes the output onto the screen, that is IO bound process. So it will concentrate only on input and output other than computations. So just it will provide the CPU for a request of input, or it will wait for a CPU to write into the output screen or out printer. So any output peripheral, that is IO bound process. There is just wait for a IO input output, spends more time in input output only. That means it will wait under IO queue. IO bound processes will wait under IO queue. Then we have CPU bound process. So CPU bound process spends more time doing computation. That is a very long CPU burst. So this is nothing but CPU bound processes are nothing but waiting in a ready queue. So whenever the ready queue is ready with a set of processes, nothing but is waiting for a CPU's turn to pick up a process for its execution. So that is CPU bound process. IO bound process, nothing but it will wait under IO queue for the proper input and output. CPU bound process, nothing but it will the processes which are waiting in a ready queue. These are the two specifications under IO bound and CPU bound processes. So IO bound process wait for only IO operations other than CPU. CPU bound process will do more computations than in the rest of the part. So here you can see in this particular diagram, so we have a ready queue, that is number of processes are waiting for its CPU's turn to for execution. So consider a situation. One single process has been started with its CPU's execution. So during that execution, in between the execution, it may need a input from the user. So it moves to the IO queue, IO waiting queues. So from that IO queue, based on the priority, whenever the user inputs input, again it moves to the ready queue and again further continues its execution. So during the execution, it may need some information from other processes. So it will halt that particular process in between the waiting state and move to the next process, swapping out, that is partially executed, swapped out processes and gets some input from the other process. Then move to the ready queue once again. From the ready queue, CPU picks up the process for execution and continues its execution. Once execution is over, it will terminate. This is how it works. So now what we are concentrating is the medium term scheduling will help us to pick up a process for its execution from the ready queue, so that its job is to schedule the CPU for its processes execution. And this is the various terms or possibilities based on the process. It may have input waiting input from the user, or it may need to wait for output to write into the printer or output unit. So these are the different queues has been taken place. This is how the medium term scheduling works. Any clarification, any doubt, please get back. Then we have something called context switch. So this is one of the important concept in CPU or scheduling, process scheduling also. This is how we can switch between different processes. So we have seen a small example in the previous slide itself. So context switch job is to switch between different processes by updating the PCB. So when CPU switches to another process, the system must save the state of the old process and load the saved state for the new process via a context switch. Its job is to switch between different processes. So whenever the CPU switches to another process, the system is saving the previous state's records, previous state of the old process, and load the saved state for the new process via context switch. So context of a process represented in the PCB. Context switch time is overhead. That is, the system does no useful work while switching. So there is one thing supposed to note it down. That is, during this context switching, it is something like the transferring of control from one process to another process. So during this particular period, so it won't perform any other task, don't perform any other useful task. That's why a little bit overhead, we can say. And the more complexity part in this is based on the operating system that we use, based on the complexity of operating system and the complexity in the PCB also. That means it's supposed to wait more time under this context switch. Again, it depends on the hardware that we use in the machine. That is time dependent on hardware support as well. Some hardware provides multiple sets of registers per CPU. Some may not provide multiple sets of registers. So this, when we say multiple set, nothing but multiple registers may be allocated for a memory. Multiple sets of registers. That means multiple context switching. Multiple contexts may have to be taken place for a particular process should complete its execution. So if you consider the previous example, I'll just have a go back to the previous slide over here. This is a context switch now. So from process P0 to process P1. So in between execution of process P0, it will halt that execution. Again, when halting, PCB should be updated. PCB 0 is updated with that, the current state. Then supposed to load from the PCB1. PCB1 executes. Again, in between an interrupt occurred, coming back to the PCB0. That is, while coming back to PCB0, PCB1 state should be updated in that PCB. Again, continues with the PCB0 execution. So now here is a switching between the control from process P0 to process P1, again process P1 to process P0. So for its intermediate execution. So this is the job of context switch. So while performing this transition from process P0 to process P1 and process P1 to back to process P0, everything should be recorded in this PCB. Okay. So this is the job of context switch. Any clarification so far? Any doubt?